Today's number is 50, as in 50 companies. That's how many have access to the AI model that just triggered an emergency meeting between the US Treasury Secretary, the chair of the Federal Reserve, and the CEOs of America's biggest banks. 50 companies: Amazon, Apple, Microsoft, CrowdStrike, and about 46 others. Everyone else is locked out, including me, and yes, including you. More on why here in a second. This is the weekend AI stopped being about a corporate story and became a government one fairly quickly. Last week, the Treasury Secretary and the Fed chair sat down with the heads of Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and Citi. Not for a quarterly check-in, but for an emergency meeting. The reason? An AI model built by Anthropic, the company behind Claude, that found thousands of security vulnerabilities in every major operating system in the matter of weeks. NBC News called it vulnerabilities. The UK is already preparing to issue formal warnings to its banks. And the model that caused all of this, it's not available to the public. It's behind closed doors, limited to roughly 50 companies. The rest of us are on the outside looking in. Meanwhile, psychologists just explain why you're more exhausted after using AI all day. And the answer is not what you'd expect. OpenAI's enterprise business is surging. The biggest AI conference of the year just declared a winner in the AI race. And the Washington Post broke a story about Anthropic inviting religious leaders to help decide how Claude handles grief, death, and yes, faith. It was that kind of weekend. I'm Don Michalik, and this is your Morning Intelligence for Monday, April 13th, 2026. Here's what we've got today. First up, the emergency banking meeting. An AI model found thousands of security flaws that had gone undetected for decades. And the government's response was immediate. We'll break down what happened, who was in the room, and what it means for the rest of us. Then, in today's rundown, a Fortune piece published Friday explains why AI is making you more tired, not less. And it has to do with boring parts of your job you didn't know your brain needed. OpenAI dropped some enterprise numbers this week that showed they're not going quietly in the AI race. And the biggest AI conference of the year, 6,500 tech leaders agreed, is Anthropic's moment. In today's Deep Cut, the Washington Post reported that Anthropic invited 15 Christian leaders to its headquarters to help decide how Claude should respond when someone asks about God, grief, faith, and what happens after we die. That's a real story. We'll tell you about it here in a moment. And today we'll close with ChatGPT becoming an ad platform that any business cannot afford to use. The $200,000 minimum is gone. Let's go ahead and get into it. All right, let me walk you through what happened last week in today's lead, because this one is one of those stories where the facts alone are enough to make you put your coffee down this morning. Anthropic, the company behind Claude, the AI tool a growing number of users use at work every single day, announced a new model called Claude Mythos Preview. And unlike most AI model announcements, this one didn't come with a product demo or a pricing page. It came with a government response. Here's what Anthropic says that the model did. Through a program called Project Glasswing, Mythos was deployed to search for security vulnerabilities in major software, operating systems, web browsers, the infrastructure the entire internet runs on. And in the matter of weeks, it found thousands of them. Some of these flaws had gone undetected for decades. We covered the Glasswing launch briefly on our April 8th show. What we didn't know then was what was happening behind the scenes. Last week, reporting from CNBC and Bloomberg confirmed the U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell convened an urgent meeting with the chief executives of Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and Citigroup. JP Morgan's Jamie Dimon was the only major bank CEO who couldn't attend. The purpose? To warn the country's biggest banks about the cybersecurity risks this model represents. NBC News gave it a name, vulnerabilities. And the response isn't just American. The Financial Times reported that UK regulators plan to issue formal warnings to banks and insurers within the next 2 weeks. Anthropic is framing this as a responsible disclosure. The model isn't available to the public. It's limited to roughly 50 partner companies. Think Amazon, Apple, Microsoft, CrowdStrike, and a handful of others. And Anthropic is positioning this as a careful approach. Find the flaws, share them with the people who can fix them, keep the model locked down so bad actors can't use it. Critics say it proves something else entirely, that AI capabilities are now outpacing the systems designed to govern them. An AI model that can easily find security flaws faster than every human security team on Earth combined, that's not just a product, that's an entire paradigm shift. So, why does this story matter? Well, here's why it stays lead on a Monday morning. When the Treasury Secretary and the Fed chair call an emergency meeting with the heads of the biggest banks in the country, not over a financial crisis, mind you, not over a pandemic, but over an AI model, that's a signal. And that's a big signal about the industry as a whole. It tells you that the people who manage the stability of the global financial system just decided that AI capability is now a systemic risk, not a theoretical one, a right now one. And for the audience of the show, well, your company uses software that runs on the operating systems Mythos just audited. Your bank is one of the institutions that was just warned. The tools that you use at work, the apps on your phone, the systems your IT department manages, all of it sits on infrastructure that an AI just stress tests for weeks, not years. Bottom line here, well, an AI model built by the company behind Claude found thousands of security vulnerabilities that humans missed for decades. The government's response was immediate: emergency meetings, regulatory warnings, and a model that's locked behind closed doors. This isn't a product launch story. This is the moment AI capability became a matter of national security. And we're all just now catching up. All right, let's get to today's rundown. In our first story in the rundown, I want to switch gears here from the macro to a more personal story. If you've been listening to this show, you know we've been tracking a thread here. Back in March 27th, we covered the BCG study that coined the term AI brain fry. The finding that heavier AI users report more exhaustion, not less. Bloomberg's Great Productivity Panic data showed that the work app usage spiked up 346% after AI adoption. AI was supposed to save time. The data said it wasn't. Now, psychologists are explaining why. They're explaining the why behind the data. Fortune published a piece on Friday citing researchers who say the problem isn't the AI itself. It's what AI took away from humans, namely the boring stuff: filing, formatting, data entry, organizing folders, the tasks everyone was happy to hand over to a chatbot. Well, it turns out your brain needed those tasks all along, not because they were valuable work per se, but because they gave your brain a break. Psychologists call it cognitive recovery. When you do a mindless task, your brain isn't necessarily idle. Instead, it's recovering, processing, getting a fresh perspective on the hard problems you were wrestling with before. When AI removes those tasks, you don't get that free time back. Instead, you get another high intensity task, and then another, and then another, and then another. You go from complex problem to complex problem with no mental rest stops in between. And so by the end of your day, you're not more productive, you're absolutely tapped out. As one psychologist quoted in a piece put it, we only have so much attention and so much mental bandwidth. And if we're doing these high level tasks all day long, we're going to run out of energy way faster. Well, so what? If you've been using AI to eliminate the boring parts of your job and somehow feel more drained by the end of the day, you're not just imagining it. The boring stuff was doing something for you all along. And the next time your company rolls out another quote unquote AI efficiency tool, the question to ask isn't just what it automates, but what does it actually take away from you in your day to day work? All right, our second story in today's rundown. We're going to hear a lot about Anthropic today, just to forewarn you, and deservedly so. They had one of the biggest weeks ever for an AI company. But the other side of the scoreboard deserves a check in as well. because OpenAI dropped some numbers this week that tell a different story than maybe some that we told last week. At the Human X conference, OpenAI's chief revenue officer, Denise Dresser, revealed that the enterprise revenue now makes up more than 40% of the company's total sales, and is on pace to match consumer revenue by the end of the year. That's a massive shift. Not long ago, enterprise was just a fraction of OpenAI's business. Codex, OpenAI's coding agent, has crossed 3 million users. That number was, in Dresser's words, almost zero at the start of this quarter. 3 million in roughly 3 months. That's incredible. And for some context here, GPT 5.4, which launched in early March, is the model powering a lot of this growth. It scores 75% on the OS World V benchmark, a test that simulates real desktop tasks like opening files, running software, navigating workflows. That's above human performance on that benchmark, which sits at just about 72.4%. The model also supports a million token context window, meaning it can ingest entire project histories or code bases in a single request. And I'll make note of this. That 75% figure is OpenAI's own benchmark. Independent verification is still catching up. But the enterprise revenue numbers are real, and the Codex adoption curve is real as well. So what? Well, while Anthropic is winning the mindshare war, and we'll get that here momentarily, OpenAI is winning the enterprise wallet, at least for now. It's catching up to Anthropic. 40% of revenue from business customers alone, 3 million Codex users in a single quarter. The AI race isn't just a coronation for Anthropic, it's a two-front war, and both companies are coming to the finish line neck to neck. All right, our third story of today's rundown. And speaking of that mindshare war, the Human X conference wrapped up last week in San Francisco. More than 6,500 executives, founders, and investors all attended. It's one of the biggest AI industry gatherings of the year, and the verdict from the floor was rather unanimous. CNBC's dispatch from the event described the atmosphere as Claude mania. Anthropic, not OpenAI, was the company everyone was talking about. Claude Code, Anthropic's coding agent, was called the tool on everyone's lips. Glean CEO Arvind Jan told CNBC that Claude Code is putting pressure on business leaders to deploy it. And the numbers do back it up here. Claude Code is now generating more than $2.5 billion in annualized revenue. That's a product that launched to the general public less than a year ago. Now, to be clear, OpenAI still has 900 million weekly active users. They just showed us those enterprise numbers earlier last week. The race is tightening, and it's not over by any stretch of the imagination. But the industry's attention just shifted. And attention, at least in this market, tends to lead adoption by about 6 months. So what? Well, again, if you've been hearing more about Claude at work lately, you're not just imagining it. At the biggest AI conference last week, the practitioners, the people who actually build with these tools, picked a side. And for the first time ever, it wasn't OpenAI. All right, you're starting your Monday with us and you find what you're hearing useful. I invite you to share this with one person. Share this episode with that one person that keeps asking you, hey, tell me more about AI. What's going on in the world of AI? That colleague who keeps saying, I really need to pay more attention to this stuff. Well, consider this their on-ramp. Text them the link, drop it in the Slack channel, drop it on LinkedIn, whatever is easiest for you. It takes all of 5 seconds, and I appreciate it if you'd help this show grow. Thank you so much. All right, let's get into today's deep cut because this one is unlike anything we've covered on this show. According to the Washington Post, in late March, Anthropic, the $380 billion company behind Claude, invited roughly 15 Christian leaders to a closed-door 2-day summit at its San Francisco's headquarters. Catholic priests, Protestant pastors, theology professors, business leaders with religious backgrounds. The Post spoke with 4 of those attendees. And the questions Anthropic brought to them weren't about product features or pricing tiers. They were questions like, how should Claude console someone who is grieving? How should it engage with someone at risk of self-harm? If a user asks whether AI can be the child of God, what should it say? How should it handle questions about its own mortality? I'm going to sit with that last one for a second. A $380 billion technology company asked a group of religious leaders how its chatbot should respond to questions about its own death. Among the attendees, Megan Sullivan, a philosophy professor at Notre Dame who specializes in the ethics of death in the afterlife, and Father Brendan McGuire, a Catholic priest based in Silicon Valley who advises tech companies on ethical questions. Anthropic says this was the first in a planned series of consultations. They intend to expand the dialogue to leaders of other religious traditions, as well as secular philosophical perspectives. The input is designed to inform what's called the Claude Constitution, the internal set of rules that governs how the model actually behaves. So, why is this worth your time? Well, here's why this isn't just another nice curiosity piece. Millions of people talk to Claude and ChatGPT every single day. And a growing number of those conversations aren't about spreadsheets or marketing copy. They're rather personal in nature. They're about loss, about anxiety, about meaning, about the questions people used to bring to a therapist, a pastor, or even a close friend. And Anthropic knows this. The fact that they invited religious leaders, not just ethicists or just psychologists or people whose entire professions lives on building and helping humans navigate suffering and mortality, tells you something about what AI has actually become. It's not just a productivity tool anymore. For some people, and a growing number of them, it's a confidant. And the companies building these tools are now grappling with that reality. The question underneath all this is, who decides how an AI responds when a human being is at their most vulnerable? An engineer in San Francisco, a set of rules written by committee, or someone who spent their entire life sitting with people in their worst moments? Anthropic is at least asking the question, and I think that's rather worth noting. The takeaway here, if you've ever asked an AI something personal, maybe about loss, about purpose, about what comes next, you should know that Anthropic just invited religious leaders to help decide how it actually responds. That's the kind of story that tells you more about where AI is headed than any benchmark ever will. All right, before we go here, this one is for anyone in marketing or anyone who runs a business. ChatGPT is now an ad platform. And as of this month, you can actually afford to use it. Quick backstory here. Back on April 2nd, we told you that OpenAI's advertising pilot had crossed $100 million in annualized revenue in just 6 weeks. At the time, there was a catch. The minimum buy-in was $200,000. That locked out every small and mid-sized business. Well, that benchmark is gone. OpenAI is rolling out self-serve advertising tools this month. No minimum commitment. Any business can now buy ads that appear contextually at the bottom of ChatGPT answers. And the platform is expanding internationally. Think Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, they're up first. A few guardrails worth noting here. No ads in conversations about mental health, politics, or sensitive topics. No ads served to users under 18 years old. 2 weeks ago, we told you ChatGPT crossed $100 million in ad revenue already. Now, they're opening a door to everybody. If you work in marketing, this is the week to start paying attention to that and maybe explore what you and your team would like to do with ChatGPT. All right, for tomorrow, a few teasers here and a few things we're catching and watching for tomorrow. The Musk versus OpenAI trial is now 14 days away. Late Friday, OpenAI accused Musk of staging a legal ambush after he demanded Sam Altman's removal and pledged to donate any damages to charity in a lawsuit seeking up to $134 billion. Expect more filings this week, and we'll make sure to follow it for the latest. And the Copilot paywall takes effect on Wednesday, 2 days from now. If your company hasn't decided, well, today's the day, maybe even tomorrow if you are late to the game. We'll see you tomorrow. And that's Morning Intelligence for Monday, April 13th, 2026. If you like what you heard, hit subscribe from wherever you're listening. Share with that one friend who keeps asking you, hey, what's going on in the world of AI? You know who they are. I'm Don Michalik. Thank you for listening and have a great start to your week.